Joseph Smith saw an angel. Dum 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 dum.
Heyo.
Hello.
Welcome to Please Bless This Podcast, the podcast where two sisters talk about all things Mormon and pop culture and sometimes 20-year-old South Park episodes. Here we go.
Yep, here we go.
We were just talking about how this is a palate cleanser episode after our educated episode last week, which was real heavy, real
I feel
dense.
like our Jeanette McCurdy episode was real heavy. We've had some like really intense subject matter and some really hearty texts. Like, if you're following along with the podcast and trying to engage with all the content we're choosing, it's like we're asking you to read a couple of books a month here.
Right.
And this time, it's just a 20-minute episode of South Park, folks.
Yeah, and it's just a delightful little morsel.
Pull it up on HBO Max and get to watching. It's season 7, episode 12, titled All About Mormons.
Yeah, and it sure is.
It sure is. Originally aired in 2003.
Which I didn't realize it was that old. I was
old.
like, man, this is old. I mean, I watched it when I, like, probably in 2008. You know, it's just crazy. I'm ancient.
I had never seen it before. I don't think I've ever watched a full episode of South Park before.
Yeah.
Though obviously I'm very aware of South Park and I've seen snippets of it and I am aware of South Park and Mormons.
Yes.
But I've never watched the episode and it was honestly an absolute delight.
100% through and through.
Except, disclaimer.
Please.
What's the disclaimer here, Katie?
The disclaimer is that, like, from the jump, I mean, within like 30 seconds of the episode starting, they drop an F slur and a hard R word.
Yeah.
Just boom, boom. And it's like, oh, whoa. You know, what am I watching?
Yes.
It's really intense. It's South Park circa 2003 through and through. But, you know, just a little content warning there. The rest of it's a delight.
Hold on to your hats for the first minute.
Put on your headphones.
Ooh,
for sure. I wanted to add, my name is Katie.
Oh, I'm Elisa.
And that's Elisa.
Yeah.
Hey. And us. We're talking about South Park.
Here we go. So a little bit about South Park. It's been running since 1997.
It's so ridiculous.
That's so crazy to me. It's like its 25th season or something right now. And it's renewed for like several more years.
It's just absurd.
This show will never quit. Those kids have been in elementary school a long time.
Yeah, bless them.
The creators of South Park are Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who also created the Book of Mormon musical, which that is definitely an upcoming episode.
100%.
And they created the movie Orgasmo in 1997, which I am vaguely familiar with, but I've never watched, and we will definitely be watching. Sure. Apparently in that movie, Trey Parker stars as a Mormon missionary who goes like tracting, and this porn director scouts him for a porno, and he's like, okay, I can make a lot of money and pay for my wedding, my like expensive temple wedding to my girlfriend back home. It sounds crazy.
Great. Okay.
So these guys love Mormons.
Yeah. For sure. They're a really funny target.
Yeah, they're a really
Mormons
funny target.
Are so goofy, and they're like the perfect character, that overly nice, you know, just absurd, like basically like flat earther vibes. But with the Christian overtone. It's
so much comedic material.
Yeah.
Can I just say about Trey Parker and Matt Stone before we dive into the episode? I was like, one of them must be Mormon. They must have Mormon family. Like, how do they know so much about Mormons? Why do they care so much? Neither of them are Mormon.
Yeah.
That is so fascinating to me. So they grew up in Colorado, and if you're in the Intermountain West at all, you're gonna know Mormons. If you're in Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Arizona.
Right.
Nevada. You're just running into a lot of Mormons. So that was it. They just knew a lot of Mormons. Trey Parker's first serious girlfriend was a Mormon, and he talks about going to her house for family home evening.
Yeah.
Which is literally the plot of the South Park episode.
Right.
And being like, what is this?
Yeah. But also kind of like, yeah, like, oh, like this is kind of fun and they're all doing stuff together. Isn't that sweet?
So they've done a lot of interviews since the Book of Mormon came out in 2011 where folks ask them, like, what's your deal with Mormons? Mm-hmm. And they're just like, I mean, Mormons are hilarious and silly because their whole belief system is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But also they're so nice. And isn't it fascinating that these like preposterous stories actually make people into good people? Mm-hmm. And I find that to be hilarious and fascinating. And they talk about Joseph Smith and they're like, I'm just going to quote, this is from a Vulture profile about them around the release of the Book of Mormon musical. Mm-hmm. Matt Stone, and the story of Joseph Smith, the way it's told, it's so silly, right? Like they're just like, he's hilarious. And then he says, if Joseph Smith is a con man, it's completely brilliant. Yeah. And as storytellers, we're always trying to come up with new stories, and we kind of know how hard it is. So to watch Joseph Smith take these old stories, like I think he's referencing like Bible stories basically, right, and make America a central character and inspire people, that's just great. I don't know why or how else to explain it other than that it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my notes, I was like, I feel like they admire Joseph Smith as like an artist.
Yeah. I see that. I mean, I feel like Joseph Smith, at the end of the day, he had to have been pretty brilliant. And he was also just really fascinating. He was like a magician. He was like a folk magician. He, you know, was a treasure hunter and clearly a wordsmith.
Yeah, sure.
It's
also an absolute creepazoid, but
totally,
you know, when you haven't devoted your life to him, it's a little easier to just kind of laugh that off and be like, this guy's hilarious and he like really did something here with these crazy tales. And everything they're saying about Mormonism, it's just like matter of fact that it's not true. Mm-hmm. There's no question in the way they're talking about it. They're like, this is absurd, but isn't it impressive?
Right. And that's like a fun way when you get to see Mormonism through the lens of somebody who's never been Mormon. Mm-hmm. Like, that's fun. They really do truly get to see everything just as it is. Whereas we see it through this muddled, traumatized lens. Yeah.
Yes. So with that said, let's get into the episode, Katie.
Let's just dive right in. The episode centers around a new character on the show who only shows up for this episode named Gary Harrison. And it's Gary's first day at school, and they're like, who is this kid? He's like clearly a little goody two shoes. Mm-hmm. Very sweet, very nice.
Very smart.
Right. So the guys convinced Stan to go kick his ass. Mm-hmm. And so Stan is like, all right, I guess I'm going to go kick this kid's ass for no reason. And the kid basically is like, I get it. I'm the new kid. You know?
Yeah, you gotta beat me up to look powerful. I won't fight back. Go for it.
Hilarious. And he ends up inviting Stan over for family home evening. Mm-hmm. Which the fact that they used the term family home evening is so funny.
Yes.
I forgot about that completely.
We need to talk about what family home evening is.
Sure. Tell us.
I mean, it's a commandment basically in the church for families to set aside one night a week to spend time together. Huh? And it's kind of loose like that, but it's also kind of rigid like that. I actually looked it up just last night. I was like, what is the current like way that the church frames family home evening? Because when we were growing up, it was Monday nights. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to be at home. So you can't be like at a sports practice or a friend's house, or your dad can't stay late at work that day. You all got to come home and be together. And there's some kind of lesson involved, some kind of treat some kind of musical number, and
Mhm.
some kind of activity.
Yeah.
So I looked it up last night on the church website. 100% the same.
Oh.
It's still Monday nights. They're like open and close with prayer,
Mhm.
include music to make it fun, make sure there's a spiritual message, think about like service you can do. And that's the gist of it. Family home evening, man. Monday nights.
That's beautiful. I do also
You
remember.
know.
Yeah, I also remember a big part of family home evening was that was when we went through the calendar for the
Yes.
week. It was like, let's figure out what the fuck is going on this
Yeah.
week.
Where's everybody gonna be?
Yes.
We were not good at family home evening.
No, not particularly. We would go through big phases of being really bad at it and just like making it like fun or particularly spiritual didn't really happen.
We didn't have a lot of lessons. Like, we had some.
Yeah.
I remember a handful.
Yeah, but I think it was mostly just like read something from the ensign or from the friend or something.
Yeah. And like, I don't remember it having a lot of treats.
No, where were the treats?
We should have had more treats. And I don't remember like playing games or things like that.
Though we may have. We played
have.
Uno and Clue and stuff like that.
It just doesn't stand out to me, but we may have. But the like, let's all play our musical instruments.
Yeah.
That rings true to me.
For sure, which they do beautifully on this show.
Yes.
Holy smokes. What is the line? He says, "Hey kids, why don't you grab your instruments and play Stan a little something?"
And they all, even the baby has an instrument.
Baby.
And they are good. They're like the freaking Partridge Family.
Yeah, they're jamming out.
Singing a little tune.
Yeah.
That was hilarious to me because I was like, this is the most Mormon thing I've ever seen.
They nailed it.
That was our family to a T. Okay, kids.
Exactly, including me being the baby, and they would give me some like bullshit ukulele or like a recorder or something, and be like, here, you play with this.
Yep, I was on the piano.
Yeah,
our brother was on the cello. I mean, there were some large instruments being used. Our dad was on the violin.
Yeah.
Our mom was the audience.
Yes, and I would be rocking vocals, ukulele, something like that.
And eventually piano.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, now is your time to perform. And we would just play our tunes. And that was family time.
And you just did it. And I guess people who aren't members of the church or who aren't super familiar won't know this, but in the church, it's common for it to be an expectation in the family that every child play an instrument.
Oh, yeah.
So like at family home evening, we would all play music together, but also like if you go visit grandma is going to ask you to play music. Or if you're visiting anybody, you may be asked to perform.
Yes.
It's common.
I remember visiting grandma in college. When I lived in Utah, I would go to grandma's house and I would bring friends with me. And these friends were constantly being forced to perform.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, what do you play? What's your instrument? And they're just like, or she's like, okay, then you gotta sing. And she'd be like, sing louder, sing alto, sing,
assigning people their parts.
And like, I remember my friend Matt coming once and she's like, you have a beautiful voice, you should sing more. And he kind of laughed and she was like, I'm serious.
Grandma. It reminds me of like in period films about like the Regency era. It's always play the pianoforte. That was us. We were little Elizabeth Bennet. Yeah.
Anyway, family home evening. So he goes to family home evening, Stan does, and he's like, what is this?
Yeah.
Why are you all so excited to be around each other? And also Gary's family is humongous. There's like 5 kids.
Yeah.
They're all blonde.
Yeah.
Anyway, and Stan just doesn't know what to do with it. And they start to explain about Mormonism and they teach him about Joseph Smith through a beautiful little song.
Yeah.
And then Stan goes home and is like, wow, I just had an experience.
Yeah, and Dad, why haven't you ever taught us about Joseph Smith and how God and Jesus appeared to him?
Yeah.
You know? And his dad's like, what?
He also like walks into his house and his dad's like sitting on the couch drinking a beer, watching TV.
Yeah.
His mom, everybody's like kind of tuned out from each other.
Yeah.
And he's just like, why don't we have family home evening?
Yeah. And Randy Marsh is like, what are they indoctrinating my child
Yes.
with? And he's like, I'm going to go kick that dad's ass.
Yes.
And so he leaves with beer in hand to go kick Mr. Harrison's ass. And then it gets flipped in reverse, just like with Stan and Gary.
Yes, they're so nice to him.
He ends up with a Rice Krispie treat on the couch, getting read to from the Book of Mormon.
And they disarm him just the same way Gary disarmed Stan at the playground. They're like, oh my goodness, I can see how you'd be so upset that it might seem like we're trying to convert your little boy, and we have such respect for everybody's beliefs, but also have a seat. We'd love to tell you about Joseph Smith and the Angel Moroni.
Oh my gosh, yes. Angel Moroni, the white Native American.
Stan's dad goes home and is like, we're Mormon now.
Yeah. And his mom's like,
our new
what?
religion. Oh my gosh. So then they have dinner again with the family. Things kind of come to a head.
Yeah.
And Stan's like, y'all are like being super nice just to weasel your way into our house and teach us stuff, aren't you?
Right. You're telling a story about Joseph Smith where he's clearly conning everyone around him and you're playing it off like it's a miracle.
Yeah.
But he's obviously a charlatan. Like, get out of my house.
Right. My favorite part in that scene was when Stan's dad is like, don't disparage our new religion, Stan. Yeah. Like he's already so in. Anyway, Stan sees right through it, calls the whole thing off. The next day at the bus stop, Gary comes up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And Stan's just like, look, you're wackos. I'm not into it. And Gary's like, dude, even if it's not true, I have a wonderful life and a wonderful family. So, like, suck it.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the episode.
That's the end of the episode. And I thought that was a really interesting little addition. Mm-hmm. It definitely sent a message. Like, I do think that Trey Parker and Matt Stone, though they love to make fun of Mormons because they're such easy targets, they are a little bit like, we think their religion is ridiculous, but like be respectful of everybody.
Yeah.
I
think they're really genuinely like, this is demonstrably false, but it doesn't really matter if you're like being a good person. Right.
And I can tell they think Mormons are good people. And to that point, we mentioned earlier how they, in media in general, Mormons are always portrayed as being so nice.
Yeah.
And like, I get that for sure. And like, Mormons are pretty nice, but like, as somebody who was raised Mormon, like, it's kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
And I guess people just don't really see that. Like, I have known, and maybe just because I've mostly known Mormons technically in my life, in my little brain, like I've known lots of terrible Mormons who were just rotten to the core, so mean-spirited, terrible gossips,
super passive aggressive.
Yes.
Lots of ulterior motives.
Liars.
I feel the same way that like, I'm hesitant to say this, but
okay,
the meanest people I've ever met are like Mormon moms with young kids who are like, not only am I fulfilling my divine destiny here and therefore the most important person in the world, I'm also persecuted in a way that you could never understand. Right. And so I am going to be like the most entitled, but also the most victimized person on the planet at all times. And I'm also going to make a lot of assumptions about how easy your life is compared to mine. And I'm going to just assault you with those assumptions at all times.
You nailed it.
Am I overstating it?
And you know, the only person who's worse
Who?
is their teenage daughter.
Sure.
Yeah,
Ooh.
some of the most foul things that have ever been said to me in my life have been said to me by Mormon women.
100%.
Who are otherwise so sweet.
Yes.
And probably to their neighbors who don't actually know them, they're like, wow, they're wonderful. They leave me cookies on Christmas, and when they found out I had been in the hospital, they like checked in on me, and they'll do all this stuff, but it's just bullshit. It doesn't matter. Yes. It's not actually kindness. It's trying to reach you so that they can spread their message, or just otherwise project that they're a good Mormon. Yep. They're the nice Mormon.
Yep.
Not real.
100%. I again, revealing some things about myself. I was going to therapy during a particularly stressful period of my PhD program. Mm-hmm. And I was seeing a therapist who had no Mormon background or sense of Mormonism or whatever, but worked with a lot of academics. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of talking through some of like the pressure I was under. And she was saying things to me about like, well, academic culture can be toxic in these ways and these ways, and you probably have people doing X, Y, and Z, like gaslighting you or pressuring you or whatever. And I was like, honestly, not really. That mostly happens to me at church.
Yeah.
And like the stories I would tell were almost all just things women at church were doing that were like really kind of vicious and weird and like, Mormon women, man, get it together.
Yeah, it's the like, weird gaslightiness too, where they'll say something that's so like aggressively like awful or whatever. It's so just plain as day, but they say it in such a way
with the sweetest little smile.
You can't do anything about it.
And you can't actually directly address the thing that's going on. You can't say like, whoa, that was aggressive. Is everything okay? Because then it's like you are somehow the aggressor.
How'd you spin it that way? I'm not being aggressive. Right. I have a smile on my face. I'm being sweet.
100%. It's this messed up little dance you have to do. It's exhausting. And yeah, Mormon women are oppressed. And and that is a reality, but it also feeds this like viciousness and unhappiness and cruelty, honestly. Anyway, we're getting into the weeds here, but like, yes, I get why people see Mormons as really nice, but underneath the sort of veneer of that is some nastiness. Yeah. So Mormons aren't that nice, you guys. They really aren't that nice.
No. And of course, we don't mean all of them. There are good people everywhere.
Of course.
There are as many good Mormons as there are anybody else. They're just really good at putting on an affect and looking nice. Whatever that means.
So let's break down a couple of things about this episode. First, I want to talk about the things that are so Mormon, but like in such a subtle, low-key way that I was like, this is top notch.
Okay.
One is the character Gary low-key has a Utah accent.
Yeah, for sure.
He speaks just differently enough from the other kids in the show that you're like, wait.
Yeah. And maybe it's them just speaking in a Colorado accent, like a normal kind of Colorado accent. But yeah, I had the same thought. I was like, wow, they nailed him. They nailed his family. Like beautiful Mormon family.
I said, I was like, who does Gary's dad look like? Because even the like, South Park isn't a high-end animation, right? They're not doing a lot to make each character's look super distinctive, but the dad was he looked like a Mormon man I'd met 100 times. And I decided that the inspiration for him, I'm just pulling this out of my ass. I decided the inspiration for him has to be Lloyd Newell, the host of Music and the Spoken Word.
Perfect.
Just Google that. You'll see his little face and you'll be like, that's a Mormon man if I've ever seen one.
He's the prototype.
And then one other thing that I think is sneakily perfect Mormon is that I think Gary's older brother is gay.
Yes.
But in the closet, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to know if that's South Park canon.
And I looked into it, Elisa. I looked into it. I went to the South Park fandom website and I looked up that character who, for no good reason, has his own page.
That's so
And
funny to me.
yes, and it doesn't say. There's no speculation.
He has like 2 lines in a show that has 25 seasons, over 300 episodes, and he has his own fan page.
Yeah. Every child in that family does.
That's magnificent.
It's what a show.
That's the cultural impact of this episode right there.
There it is.
Let's also talk about the church history that they get into.
I love it so much because I was thinking as I was watching it, they could have done it. They could have gone so many different directions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is so much good, ridiculous, juicy content there. And I think they did a great job.
I was kind of surprised to find that they told the story of Joseph Smith pretty much straight up.
Yes.
There was not a lot of editorializing, not a lot of like spinning it negatively. They just told the story straight up.
Right. No negative spin other than the background music saying dum 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 dum,
which was hilarious.
So funny.
It was killing me. It'd be like Joseph Smith saw an angel. Dum 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 dum.
And then sometimes when he did something especially dumb, it would go really hard. Yes. Dum 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 dum.
And sometimes he'd say something that was like clearly a con, and his eyes would kind of dart around. But then everybody in the song would be like, "Oh, that makes sense," and then it would just go dum 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 dum.
So dumb.
It was iconic. I want that song on my Spotify immediately.
Yeah, it was hysterical.
I want to listen to it while I fall asleep at night. It is perfect.
I hadn't seen that episode. I mean, it's probably been like 13, 15 years or something since I have seen that. And I laughed just as hard. Yeah. I mean, it still holds up. It's so funny.
I think the real like linchpin of the Joseph Smith story and song in this episode is when they talk about Joseph Smith translating the Book of Mormon using stones in a hat.
Yes.
Because in 2003, when this came out, that was not the way that the translation of the Book of Mormon was being taught in mainstream Mormonism.
No.
I was aware of the Urim and Thummim of like seer stones. I knew that they were a thing in early Mormon history. Mm-hmm. But when we were taught about the translation of the Book of Mormon, every like image that every church produced image of that in those days showed Joseph Smith with the gold plates in front of him. Maybe they were covered or partially covered or whatever, reading from the plates. And there was like a translator across from him scribing.
Right. I know. Or you'd see just standalone like the Urim and Thummim. Yeah. Or seer stones. Sure. Like there would be an image of just those items. So being like, yeah, those were a thing, but not him actually using them.
It wasn't until over a decade after this episode came out that the church started releasing their gospel topics essays where they address like controversies in church history, like the fact that mainstream Mormons were never taught that Joseph Smith was a polygamist and had many wives, including 14-year-olds, until people had the internet and could figure it out for themselves. And then the church was like, oh shit, we better address this. Right. And the rocks in a hat were another one of those things. So South Park was 10 years ahead.
It rocked my world at the time.
Now the church is like, oh yeah, that's how he did it.
Yeah.
The majority of translation happened with him looking at stones in a hat.
Yeah. I remember seeing that episode for the first time and being like, what?
Yes.
And thinking that can't be right. That's an exaggeration. And then doing a little bit of Googling and being like absolutely blown away.
Yeah.
And at the time that I saw this episode as a teenager, I was already like, I don't believe in this for a lot of reasons. But I didn't realize that Joseph Smith was like a bad guy.
Yeah.
And this was where that all really cracked open for me. This was the beginning. So South Park. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't seen the episode, so I had to find out about the rocks in a hat the hard way.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, why was I being lied to? I had gone on a mission and studied the church and like was teaching how to preach my gospel about the translation of the Book of Mormon. Not a whisper about freaking rocks in a hat.
Yeah. That's
So
tough.
one thing I did after watching this episode, and I sent this to you, Katie, I watched this really iconic video that the church released.
Ugh.
And it's Russell M. Nelson, the current prophet, sitting in a room where the Book of Mormon was translated, like a restoration of that room.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there with a woman from the General Relief Society presidency, and he's talking about the translation of the Book of Mormon and how miraculous it was. And he has a little hat.
Mm-hmm.
And he very briefly looks into it.
Yeah. And he says something like, and if he put his head into the hat, it helped him to see the light.
Yes, because apparently these rocks are glowing with like
there's light.
Some shit.
Right.
I mean, as if, and it's not like an explanation or an apology or something, like we know we've misled or we know we maybe misrepresented this or whatever. It's like, oh no, this is what we've always known, right?
Yeah, just laying it out there.
Not what we've always known. In fact, way weirder.
Yes.
Way weirder. And
yeah, when we were young, we thought that he just, kept it like, covered from other people who were helping him scribe. Not that he was looking in a fucking hat.
Because Katie, if he could just look into a hat at some rocks, why did he need gold plates?
Right. What, you need the special equation? You need the artifacts?
It doesn't make any sense, especially when you think about like the end of the Book of Mormon, where it's like Moroni is like the last surviving like Nephite, right? And he's like wandering the earth and in grave danger and about to die, but he has to stay alive to deliver these plates to the Hill Cumorah or whatever. Why? We didn't need him. Joseph Smith barely even looked at those guys. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make a lick of sense.
It never really did. Like there were gold plates in upstate New York, and oh, by the way, no one really ever saw them. And oh, by the way, they got taken back to heaven. We don't have them anymore. I mean, it was always sus.
Right. But it's straight up witchcraft.
Right?
He's practicing magic.
Also, I was aware again of the Urim and Thummim, and they're like in the Book of Mormon and whatever. But that's not really what he was using when he translated the Book of Mormon. No. He was using this little seer stone that he had gotten himself or like stole from somebody. And he used it to go treasure hunting and swindle people out of money all the time. And was convicted for it.
Yes.
Ah!
Straight up treasure hunter.
Anyway, I just love that they're like, on South Park, just like, here he is, head in a hat.
Right, straight up.
And every Mormon's head explodes. The other story they tell in the song that I love is the story of the 116 missing pages of the Book of Mormon.
Oh my God.
Because again, they tell it straight up.
Yeah.
They tell it the way we were taught it.
Right. Martin Harris took the pages home. Dum, 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 dum. His wife is looking at them like, okay, so, but what if we like don't give these back? Is he going to be able to retranslate this section the same way?
Yeah.
Like, let's try.
Let's test it. I'm a little skeptical. Let's see if he's really translating here or if this is just bullshit.
Right. This is really sus. Lucy Harris. Smart. Yes. And Joseph Smith, of course, just throws a little fit and is like, I spoke to God and he's really mad at me now and he's not going to let me retranslate. It's going to be different now.
Yes. And Martin Harris is like, oh, God got mad at you. That must mean that this is all real.
Right. You're willing to admit that God is angry with you. So you must be telling the truth.
And the way that was framed to me growing up was that like Joseph Smith was like, the Lord won't let me retranslate because enemies of the church will get their hands on that original translation, make changes to it, and be like, see?
Yeah.
So basically admitting, except blaming it on enemies of the church instead of his own bullshit. Basically admitting, I can't retranslate this exactly the way it was translated before. That's too risky. Oh my gosh. Just
dumb,
that ever
dumb.
so slight reframing. I was like, yeah. What a completely bullshit story, those 116 lost pages. But believing Mormons are Martin Harris dumb about that.
And they use it as a way to affirm their faith, which is what they do in the South Park episode. Also, they're like, isn't it great? That proves that he's true, that it's true. And it's like, Stan is like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yep.
Like, he's a con man.
Good old Stan. Sees right through it, man. Good for him. Oh, I feel like one last church history thing. Stan goes home and he's like, I didn't know Adam and Eve lived in Jackson County, Missouri.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Again, if you're not super familiar with Mormons, this is literally what they teach and believe.
Yes.
So I think there's like, they're kind of walking back this idea that the Garden of Eden was in Missouri, maybe. I've seen some stuff about that, but regardless, that's what we were taught.
Yeah. 100%.
And whether or not the Garden of Eden is in Missouri, Adam-on-Diamond is in Missouri. I've been there.
Of course you have.
It is just an open space in the middle of nowhere that Mormons go visit. There's like a Mormon public bathroom there. Mormon public bathrooms, by the way, are always really nice.
Yeah.
If you're ever traveling and you don't want to use like a filthy rest stop, find a Mormon historical site, man. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all it is. Just empty space. It's green. It's pretty, I guess. You know, looks like everything else around there. But Mormons believe that like Adam and Eve blessed their family in Adam-on-Diamond. I've heard talk about how like when the second coming of Jesus Christ happens, Mormons will gather at Adam-on-Diamond. That's why we were told to get ready with our families to like trek to Missouri.
Yeah.
So yeah, we also have an uncle who spent his career working for the church's law firm. The much maligned Curtin McConkie.
Yeah, not a good look.
Rightfully maligned. And one of his jobs was to buy up real estate in Missouri. The church is just buying up Missouri.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mormons in Missouri, man. And what are the odds that it would all happen in Missouri when Joseph Smith and the Saints were in Missouri at the time that these revelations were received? What a coinkydink.
Yeah, what a concept. I will say, when I was a kid learning about the significance of Missouri, I remember always thinking, but they have tornadoes.
Yeah, I don't want to live in Missouri. I know every time I've ever been to Missouri is in the summer and it's so freaking humid. And I'm always like, yeah, as a believing Mormon, I was like, I don't want to have to live here.
This can't be right.
Couldn't God have chosen a more temperate climate? Anyway, Adam-on-Diamond, dumb. And on that note,
what a fun time. I know we should do more of these palate cleanser, easy listening episodes. It was a big leap from the 12-hour reading of Educated to the 20-minute watching of a South Park episode.
It's a palate cleanser for us and for our listeners.
Yeah.
Next week will not be a palate cleanser. We're gonna be talking about Sins of the Mother, the new Netflix documentary about the like Mormon extremist sect and the woman who murdered her own kids. But don't worry, for now, just bask in the gentleness of South Park.
Yes, enjoy this moment. By the time this episode comes out, that documentary will be out and available, so you should watch it before we put out our episode, and we'll all talk about it together, and we'll process together.
There will be a lot to process. Meanwhile, follow us everywhere at Please Bless Pod. Subscribe on YouTube. Watch our videos there. It's kind of fun to watch and listen or listen.
Throw us up on the TV.
Yeah, please. What else? Also email us. Our email address is pleaseblesspod@gmail.com. We love a good episode idea. We love some feedback. We love just your adoring comments.
More adoring comments, please.
Yes.
Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, though Twitter haven't quite tapped into how that's gonna
Yeah, we need to get
work
that
for
going.
us.
Don't worry about it, folks.
Don't worry about it. It's coming. But definitely the TikTok. We're over 1,000 followers on TikTok, pretty much all thanks to Elisa and her TikTok wizardry. And please bless Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Yeah. Please bless Stan Marsh and his dad.
Yeah.
And please bless this podcast.
Yeah, please do. Amen.
Amen.